Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow, and welcome back to the Hendrickson Library at the Institute for the Preservation of Western Civilization. We are back for another fun-filled, action-packed episode of the gold standard in Iowa conservative entertainment. John, I am getting better at that intro every time I try it. I think
I actually like that version.
Pretty close. Yeah. Pretty close. Did we talk? I'm just going to jump right into it, John. Good to have you. Have we talked about the true first step in the Institute for the Preservation of Western Civilization that's downstairs?
No, we
how
haven't.
You're actually disseminating information to the masses?
No,
what do you have?
We have not.
Okay, would you like to tell the folks what we got going on?
Yes, we have a dedicated book of the week.
Yes.
That's started. It's in its second week now.
Yeah.
We launched it last week. And
so the folks are already a week behind.
Yes, yeah.
And what was week one?
It was a book by Pat Buchanan, which was more appropriate to start off.
Surprising to no one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was his one of his earlier books called The Great Betrayal.
Yeah.
And this week it's probably the best book on American conservatism, The Conservative Mind by Russell Kirk. It's the foundation of what it means to be a conservative.
So when we say the Institute for the Preservation of Western Civilization, we're not joking. We're serious that it begins with John Hendrickson here at ITR World Headquarters. That is fantastic. Okay, well, enough with the happy talk. We're here for important business. John, Election Day is tomorrow.
That's
we're
right,
recording this on Monday, and we're just going to get into it and. Where are we at? Where are we going? What does it mean? And the question that I got, and I think a lot of our listeners are interested in, is the Des Moines Register's Iowa poll. And as has been the case in recent election cycles, the Des Moines Register Iowa poll was released the Saturday night before the election. And everyone was guessing, what do you think it'll say? Everyone sort of believed that their last result, which was Trump being ahead by 4 points, was a little off, and that Trump had maybe picked up a little momentum since then. And no, the Des Moines Register's Iowa poll showed Kamala Harris winning by 3 points. What do you think? Just at face value, what was your initial take when you saw that number?
I was shocked. In fact, I was actually eager for Monday morning because I wanted to get your take on it because I did not hear about this until I stopped at a gas station and saw the Des Moines Register and actually bought the paper because I was...
So you paid them off for their shock poll.
Yes,
you actually bought a copy of the news. Good job, John.
Yeah.
Well, we are framing it and putting it on the wall there, that big front page spread. That shows,
Okay. It'll be like
Dewey defeats Truman. Yes, there we go.
Right.
I beat you to it.
Yeah. But what immediately reminded me was our poll, and you'll have to remind me of the point spread, but it reminded me of how the Register poll basically said that Miller was going to defeat Brennan Byrd.
Yeah.
And immediately I thought about that.
Well, that's right. I'm glad you brought that up. So 2 years ago, when Attorney General Brennan Byrd was running against then incumbent Tom Miller, we had polled that and showed that it was almost a dead heat. And we had showed it as almost a dead heat over and over through most of the year in 2020. Well, 3 or 4 weeks out from the election, the Des Moines Register says, no, Tom Miller's winning that, but I think somewhere around 20 to 25 points. And it's like, come on, no. That's just not true. Obviously Democrats get all excited because, they're way ahead. Well, lo and behold, they released their poll again the weekend before, and they had the race almost tied, and then, proceeded to try and claim to be the gold standard again in Iowa polling. Well, look, we had it right all along. So you're exactly right. They have certainly, over the past few cycles, the Register's Iowa poll has bounced around. And look, ask Governor Hubble how accurate the Des Moines Register's Iowa poll is, because they had him winning that election in 2018 when Kim Reynolds won.
Yes.
And we were fairly confident that Kim Reynolds was going. It was close, but we felt like she was ahead. But it feels like activism and not bona fide political polling. And look, Ann Selzer, the pollster, has a long track record, has predicted some things that others didn't see, and was right. I think famously she's had some big wins around the Iowa caucuses. She predicted Barack Obama would win when others were not. So, but this is so far out of what it just defies reason. Look, just by way of background, they have her winning Iowa by 3 points. Donald Trump won Iowa by 8 points 4 years ago. That's an 11-point swing. And I maintain that every American and every Iowan knows what they think of Donald Trump already. People's opinions haven't really changed. But to say that that has changed in those 4 years by 11 points, just frankly, it can't be right. There's the voter registration numbers, if anything, have gotten better for Republicans in those 4 years. And there's a lot of Iowans that are frustrated with the record of the Biden-Harris administration. Every single other public poll, including the ITR Foundation poll, has shown Donald Trump to be ahead 7 to 10 points. There was an Emerson College poll that was released an hour before the registers that had Donald Trump winning over Kamala Harris by 10 points. That's 13 points difference in the Des Moines Register. And I would remind folks of the real gold standard in Iowa polling, John, which is the ITR Foundation poll, which had back in early October had Donald Trump winning by 7 points. Now, I guess that's where I'm going to predict that ends up, just because I want our poll to continue to be right. I think it's Trump up 7 or 8. That's what it feels like to me. But, I mean, how... Let me put it this way. And I was interacting with our pollster from the ITR Foundation poll, the folks at Signal, over the weekend. And his words were, and we watched him say this on Fox Business this morning, John, that the worst possible outcome for Donald Trump, if he was getting wiped out across the country, losing with Kamala Harris getting 400 plus electoral votes, absolute wipeout, would mean the floor for Donald Trump would probably be winning Iowa by 3 points. Not losing it by 3 points. So this whole thing is just broken, and I had to get that off my chest today. Look, at some level, I respect them for releasing a number, the number they got, and not just trying to match everybody else's, which is clearly what a lot of other public pollsters are doing. That was their number, and they released it. But it's just wrong, folks. And I guess you just have to take our word for it. But that number is wrong. Yeah, it is not Kamala plus 3. It's probably, my guess is that is at least 10 points off. Mm-hmm. And to say that in some of the swings and the crosstabs of some of the independent numbers, especially among senior citizens, just these wild swings that those don't happen that big, that fast in American politics. So that's what I have to say about that. Any other thoughts on just the polling? I know you don't like to geek out on it quite as much as I do, but I indulge you in history, so you need to indulge me in polling. No, any other thoughts on that?
I think it's polling is fascinating. It's certainly getting more challenging. And we heard our pollster talk about this on Fox Business, just with how communication has changed with the dynamics of cell phones and how to just getting a hold of people. And so it's it sort of reminds me of almost the Des Moines Register poll almost reminds me of the in 1936 there was a magazine called Literary Digest.
Yeah, everybody remembers that, John.
Yeah, and they did they did a poll and basically they said Alf Landon was going to beat Franklin Roosevelt and
how'd that one turn out, John?
Yeah. And Landon lost in a landslide. Yeah. FDR won. Cleaned the, ran the states. So polling is is not what it used to be, and there's a lot of challenges with it.
It is, and this is a story that's been done over and over, but polling is getting more and more difficult as as times go by. It used to be everyone had the landline at home. You always answered the phone when the phone rang. And they would take 10 minutes of your time, you'd answer it and move on. Most folks that I know just don't answer unknown numbers, especially this time of year.
Yeah.
Everyone I know is getting calls from unknown numbers that are showing as their block calls. They're getting all kinds of text messages from everything. It's multiple day for Zach Nunn, for Lanon Bacam, for Trump, for the whole bit. Is how do you even get through to folks?
Yeah.
And so there's an idea that, and there's been much ink spilled on this, that Trump voters, or maybe the most passionate Trump voters, are more or less likely to respond to a poll than anyone else. I don't know whether that's true or not, but
I want to say I think you're right because I was talking with a group of people a few days ago, and these were all strong Trump supporters, and nearly all of them in this group discussion, all of them said we will not participate in a poll.
Right.
They just hang up or refuse to participate online.
Yeah, I think that's right. Now, just to understand how polling works, they don't just keep dialing random numbers and take the first 400 people or whatever their number is, and if they have to fill certain buckets, certain silos of types of voters. So we need to get, let's say to fill out our sample, we need 50 people who are Democrats over the age of 60 that are women, or we need to get 30 people who are rural independents, or what, and to make sure that you kind of fill out this representative sample. But even within those subsets of people, I think you still have the kind of person that wants to answer that, which is much more predisposed to vote for Democrats and Kamala Harris. Now, that having been said, the good pollsters are trying to account for that. And so it's not like they just woke up and started polling again for the first time in 2020. I mean, they've been through this. We saw these polls wrong in the past. So I have heard from secondhand from pollsters that are doing the internal stuff that they don't believe that the public polls, the broad national ones, are really that off like they were in the last couple cycles. We will see. I guess, and I'm hesitant to give a lot of predictions on here, John. Maybe you're willing to stick your neck out. I think it's pretty close nationally. I think this hypothetical national popular vote, just as an aside, the national popular vote doesn't exist. It never should exist. But the mythical idea that one exists, I think is probably 1 point one way or the other. And I think it's going to come down to Pennsylvania and maybe one other state. And the polling in those states is very tight. I think it's really that close.
Yeah.
I don't know. You got a different take on that, or where we're at?
No, I would agree with that. I think this is I think it will be close. This certainly is. It definitely is a historic election. I mean, just in terms of the candidates involved and the events that have happened during the campaign, and so I mean it's it's going to be and we heard this morning that we may not know until Friday.
Yeah,
and I hope that's not the case, but it's it could be that close.
I hope, and I'm going to set aside my Republican versus Democrat, who wins, who loses, my candidate, all of that aside. I really hope that the folks that are collecting and tabulating the ballots in these swing states can do so in a way that is above reproach. Because even if my candidate doesn't win, I think we need to try and get to a point where we all can have confidence in the outcome of the election. And look, this cuts both ways, John. I mean, we've had certainly plenty of Republicans that think the 2020 election was stolen. I think there were some things that were done poorly, deceitfully, illegally in that election. The flip side is true, though, too. How many times after the 2016 election do we hear about Russian collusion and stealing and all of that? So I guess that's it goes, I want to have confidence in the election again. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to a little bit about here in Iowa and a couple of things. What's going to happen? What do we think will happen in Iowa? And what does this really mean? So, I'll take a couple of scenarios, John, and I feel like I'm going on a long monologue on this one today, but maybe you're just along for the ride on this. Look, if the Des Moines Register is right, it's going to be a wipeout at the legislative level. If this really is an environment where it's even tied at the top of the ticket, or Kamala Harris wins a close election, there are a lot of incumbent Republicans are going to lose. They just are. But we've kind of established that's not going to happen. If we're back to look, Trump has won Iowa by 7 or 8 points a couple of times. Feels like about where things are to me. I think it does to you. Then I think most of these incumbents in both parties probably end up winning. But I think the interesting question is, what if all of these polls nationally in Iowa, setting aside the Register poll, are off by even a point or two? Then I think you could see some really interesting outcomes.
Yes.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah.
What you live, I haven't been getting as much mail because I don't have quite as many contests that are, but you've been getting all kinds of mail.
Yeah.
So you're in the, who's your?
I'm in the Snyder and David Young race.
Yep.
And then the Senator Sarah Trone Garrett and Mark Hansen Senate District.
Yeah, that Senate race between Sarah Trone Garrett and Mark Hansen, it's going to be well into the 7 figures spent by both parties. Yeah. We'll have to add it up afterwards. Probably $1.5 million, maybe more. It's just been all in on both sides.
I'm going to make a prediction on that.
Okay.
I'm going to predict that Hansen wins.
Okay.
And the only reason I'm predicting that, and I have no scientific prediction, but I'm going by yard signs. Okay. And I'm also going by the other reason I think is that I think there's a lot of support for Matt Schultz, who's running for county attorney of Dallas.
Yeah,
and
that's an interesting race, too.
There's a lot of yard signs for him, and I think there's going to be a lot of support for that. That'll go for Hansen as well, and so I predict both them will win.
I have to start, John, with something that somebody told me years ago as a younger candidate for the first time. Yard signs don't vote. That having been said, I've grown to believe that they are indicative of certain things. One, I agree with you on Mark Hansen's got a lot of signs up. In the big ones in certain areas, that certainly there's a lot of work being put in because they don't just show up on their own. It's work to get them all on the ground and do all that. And some organizational skills because usually a candidate's got some volunteers that are putting all those out for them, and just some organizational capacity. So they are indicative of something, but we will see. I think David Young in that House race will be fine.
Yeah.
I know David truly has been door knocking tirelessly, and is just a nice man that people genuinely like, and that counts for a lot in this business. So I think that David will come out on top in that one by a fair margin. Unless, of course, the bottom is falling out of the ballot and it's really is Kamala Harris plus 3. Then, But no, I think that's right. I really don't have a good feel for the Senate race there for you, John. I think that's one of the ones. It's been close past several cycles. So I expect that to be close. I think the one that at least most of the people that I interact with that are really curious about is Senator Brad Zahn.
Yes, yeah.
Urbandale and Johnston running against a former Urbandale City Councilman, Matt Blake. That also is going to be one of the more expensive legislative races in in state history. And I think just about any other Republican candidate, that wouldn't even be a race because that district does lean Democrat pretty hard. But Brad Zahn is very well liked, very popular, and could win it just based on his own personal popularity. So that one's going to be really interesting to watch as well.
The other one I'm interested in, too, is the Pike-Bolton race. I think that will be an interesting outcome.
I think it is stunning to think that the state fairgrounds, the east side of Des Moines, could be represented by a Republican in the legislature. Took a run at it in the House last year, or 2 years ago, but, I mean, that is, east side of Des Moines is as much of a fortress for Democrats as one can imagine. I mean, it's when I first got elected, winning there for a Republican would have been like going into Iowa City. It's just unthinkable. And yet in the age of Trump and winning on a more populist blue collar message, you're seeing more and more of those voters moving to, and Mike Pike being a lifelong East Sider, he fits that district really well. I think that's really interesting. I will say this broadly. I was discussing this with the legislative leader today. If the worst case that can happen in the state Senate, if they lose everywhere they're playing, they probably come back at 33 out of 50 seats, lose one. But it is not hard to imagine them picking up maybe 3 seats and getting to something like 37. It's just stunning to me. Similarly, on the House side, there's a lot more races in play. We've talked about this. It seems like the top number one race on the House side is Representative Bill Gustav running against I think her name is Severs over in Altoona and Saylor Township area. But there's a lot of races that you see them on TV that could swing one way or the other. But I think, look, no matter what happens, House Republicans are coming back in the 60s, which is, again, a historically high number. I guess the net of this.
Well, this, putting on your analyst hat, if Democrats do well at the legislative level, does this mean that their focus on the abortion issue paid off? Is that what wins it for them if that works?
This question is really what I want to kind of get to here at the end. Is what does this mean, right? What's our takeaway? There is no question. This isn't. It's just objective fact. Democrats have made the issue of life, the issue of abortion, their entire campaign. There's a few other pieces that you see sort of bolted on the side of it, whether it's and I'm talking in Iowa at the legislative level. You'll see every once in a while something maybe about the area education AEA bill. Yeah. You've seen that maybe in the Gustav race a little bit. Little bits here and there. But it's every candidate is talking about abortion and fetal heart. Even if they weren't like in the Mark Hansen race, he had, as county supervisor, had nothing to do with it. But because he wrote a few $50 or $100 checks to a few other Republicans, he has been now being tagged with that as well. It's the entire campaigns for them is abortion.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, John, yes. Look, if they win a few seats in a few races, they will probably feel like that tactic worked, that if it hadn't been for that, they would have lost. But I'll tell you what, if they grow these majorities, I think there has to be some soul searching. It's like, maybe we should have talked about the issues that were important to Iowans. Maybe we should have talked about inflation. Yeah. Maybe we should have talked about cost of living. Maybe we should have talked about border security and immigration and not just constantly talking about what can we do to maximize the number of abortions that are happening in the state of Iowa, which is what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah.
Because we're a million miles from safe, legal, and rare, as Bill Clinton put it.
I was talking with an out-of-state visitor and basically says that all the Democrats are running on, looking at all the ads and that's all it is.
Well, and at some level, I get it because they had won some statewide elections in other states, Kansas, Ohio, where that question was straight up on the ballot, even though the wording was off. And you know what? the pro-choice side won. So, and because they're underwater and all those other issues, the economy, inflation, immigration, those other things, well, we got to play the one we can win on. So I sort of get it, but I think you're missing a whole lot of Iowans, especially these undecided voters. Look, if you're an abortion voter or a life voter or wherever you're at on that, haven't you kind of already decided where you're at? I guess if you want to talk to that undecided swing voter, I don't know. It seems to me I want to know about the issues in that race. And speaking of something besides that, but I don't know. They don't call me to plan Democrat legislative campaigns, so I could be wrong on that, John. But so I think it will be instructive on maybe how, especially Democrats, go forward. Now, look, if this is a terrible night for legislative Republicans after a campaign of abortion, yeah, I think it's probably unlikely that they touch the issue of life for a while. Mm-hmm. I think that's true. But I think too, what maybe coming all the way back around to the issue that pays our salaries, John. Taxing, spending, fiscal issues. I think that's on the ballot here too. And as I was having this conversation earlier today, Governor Reynolds has won 2 elections now on tax policy.
Yes, yeah.
And that is being litigated by Republicans in this election, is cost of living, inflation, kitchen table issues. Mm-hmm. And if Republicans are yet again given another big set of wins at the legislative level, again, I think that probably means they ought to continue pursuing a fiscally conservative agenda.
Yes, yeah.
So
and yeah, I've noticed a lot of not necessarily specifics, but a number of Republicans at the legislative level talking about property taxes. Yep. In fact, I think it was Representative Heather Hora who had an article in the Cedar Rapids Gazette stressing property tax reform this past Sunday.
Yeah, I think that. In fact, I know that's right. I know that there are issues that even a part of where Iowans actually fall out of one side or the other, that Republicans win on these kinds of issues. Mm-hmm. Democrats usually win on these kinds of issues, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Well, Republicans win issues on taxes. But, you got to continue to follow through. You can't just keep promising.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
The legislature has a good record on taxes, but folks are pretty upset about property taxes.
Yeah.
And the legislature is going to have to deliver on it this year. So what else you got for us, John?
Well, I just I think this depending on the outcome of this election, it will be historic. I think depending on, I think if Harris wins, and I've said before on this program, I think if Harris and Walz wins, and especially if you get a Democrat-controlled Congress, I think we will see perhaps the most radical administration since the New Deal. Yeah. Because I think what we're going to see here is, one, it's I would consider it a wolf in sheep's clothing. That they've been disguising themselves as so-called moderates, and just look at what Walz has done in Minnesota, and not just terms of taxing and spending, but just terms of radically remaking the state. Harris has already signaled about wanting to pack the Supreme Court. They've already hinted at basically ending the filibuster so they can get their reforms through, getting rid of the Electoral College. I mean, these are very significant constitutional changes, to really transform the American system of government for the worst. And I think immigration, a lot of these issues are just going to get even worse with this administration. Well, and that's I hate to say that, but I just but if she wins, and the Republicans can at least hold the Senate, then, divided government continues, and then at least hopefully you can block some of that stuff from happening.
Yeah. It's not necessarily an inspirational message, but yet it's important because there's a lot at stake. There always is. And I think especially here this time because of the pretty stark differences between the two candidates that, if you care about these things, you got to get out and vote. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, just the, when Biden, I was reading an article by Victor Davis Hanson, and just, looking at whether it's, former President Obama or Hillary Clinton or Biden, I mean, just referring to conservatives either as, garbage or deplorables or clinging to their Bibles and guns. I mean, this is what they think of us. And that should be alarming.
I didn't want to do this, John, but you told me you were coming up here with a garbage bag. and yet you let me down.
Yeah.
But it does. It shows what the two sides here. And I'm actually gonna accuse Republicans of this sometimes too. They believe the very worst. The Donald Trump is a fascist. Donald Trump is a dictator. He's just waiting to take authoritarian control over this country, and there's going to be mass executions out in the street of everyone that disagrees with him. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah.
And yet on the other side, I believe that there are a string of policy decisions. Actually, I'm going to take that back. Well, I believe there's certainly some very dangerous, very reckless things that Democrats would love to do, but I also think they probably won't get a lot of them done. Some of them they will. I mean, look, we saw what a Green New Deal has done, and we see what Democrats have done with inflation. They're survivable errors. They're going to cost us for a generation. It's not necessarily the end of the world, but it is important because there are big differences. And I think both sides probably need to step back from the ledge just a little bit because, I'll just say this, win or lose, Jesus is still going to be sitting on the throne on Wednesday morning.
Yes, yeah.
And so I guess I can have quite a bit of confidence in that. So I just hope that he continues to rest his hand of providence on this nation as he has for almost 250 years, but that nothing's forever. So I feel like that was probably a little over the top for the conclusion of the podcast. What do you think, John?
I think that was a good conclusion.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll go with it then. Okay, so as I said, you got to get out and vote, folks. Polls are open. Now, this is something that's changed in the last, I think it was this way 2 years ago. Polls close at 8 p.m. now in Iowa. Used to be 9 o'clock, now it's 8. So polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can, if you're not sure where to vote, go to the Iowa Secretary of State's website or go to your local county election office website. Probably easier to find the Iowa Secretary of State. Plug in your address. It'll tell you exactly where to go. But figure it out. Have a plan. Know how you're getting there. And if you don't, ask for a ride. I can tell you that there will be no shortage of people that want to help you get to a polling place and make sure you vote. So 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. tomorrow night. And it'll be like, look, Election Day is Super Bowl Sunday for guys like me. So I can't wait. We're going to have the maps, the TVs, the whole bit going, and it's going to be great. So with all of that, we'll be back hopefully Wednesday to start digesting some of this, but we'll be back with you then. And so thanks, everyone. Thanks for indulging us. And with all of that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.